Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're floating down the creek backwards. That would be a great idea. I want the neighborhood. All right, so the motor's loud, okay? So we're going to look through the camera. So this ought to be interesting.
The dog dish went down there. You got to get it.
That's all right. We'll get it later. Well, today we're going to be talking about what's going on in South Korea. They're selling gold bars out of the vending machine. This is really cool, and you would expect to hear some of these kind of stories as the currency collapses. Collapses the world reserve currency. So Stacey is going to read.
Gigi has my seat.
Gigi's has her seat, and we're going to visit. It's like old friends floating down the river.
So I read this story, and I called Chris. I called him in the house, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Chris, they're actually selling gold bars and vending machines at convenience stores. Get that camera off me. I look like heck.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. So it says South Koreans can buy gold out of vending machines placed at convenience stores, and sales are surging. The easiness of buying gold bars at vending machines are being really appreciated, apparently, by customers. In 9 months that ended in May, $19 million worth of gold bar sales were reported. You guys, that is a lot of gold bars that were sold. They're ranging in weight. They have 5 different options. It's 0.13 all the way up to 1.3 ounces, and the smallest one goes for about $225. Interestingly, is mainly the people in their 20s and 30s appear to be the main buyers.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. The younger people are starting to wake up. The people that aren't so recency biased, the people that have been using the same currency for, several, decades and decades and decades, sometimes get a little bit used to that way, and they think that's the only way it's going to be. I almost jerked a fishing pole out.
We did that yesterday.
So keep going.
Well, I just think it's interesting. So who thought of this idea? I think it was brilliant. They said they're in 29 stores right now. They're planning to reach 50 by the end of the year, and they're planning overall to do 10,000 of the convenience stores to have these vending machines that are going to do gold. I'm curious to see if they're going to do silver also, because to me that would sell even higher or even more than gold. But whoever thought of this idea, man, I'm so into it. You guys can see I'm sweating like crazy. It's hot out here.
It is so hot.
But think about that, you guys. Think about if you could just walk into a convenience store, swipe your credit card, swipe a debit card, or I don't know, however you would pay it, and just buy precious metals right there. I guess there would be no tracking method, because a lot of you guys, that's how you ask me. You're like, you might should crank that motor because we're about to hit a tree behind you. So a lot of you guys ask me, you're like, how is this tracked? How do I pay for this? So I don't know. I'm intrigued. Anyway, the country itself has purchased about 90 tons of gold just in between 2011 and 2013. I don't even know what they purchased since then. But they really want their citizens to have access to gold, just like India, just like China. They encourage them to have access to gold. So, I don't know. This story really caught my attention.
That really makes sense because, the only reason you wouldn't want to encourage your people to enrich themselves and invest in a commodity that there's only so much of is if you had the world reserve currency. That would be the only reason, because it is direct competition with a fiat currency. And people that know the history know what happens to fiat currencies. They always return to zero. So, there's a good chance.
Well, you got a lot of countries right now that are talking about the currency right now. You got the BRICS, you got the Asian countries. I mean, with the BRICS are meeting, I think in, let's see, is it August? You've got the Asian countries that are meeting in September, which I'm watching. I have my eyes on those 2 meetings. And I think the BRICS right now, you've got, what is it? There's like 20 more countries that have asked to join them. And they are like, I think the BRICS, it's like, 40% of the national economy right now. So if you have 20 more countries joining. But anyway, let's get back to one of the countries right now that's talking about the American dollar, which is the Kenya president. And I actually shared a video on Twitter the other day, and he got a standing ovation. And you guys, what he said, you can't blame him for what he's saying. He quoted, "How is the U.S. dollar part of the trade between his different countries?" He's like, "Why is it necessary?" Boom, we just hit a cypress knee. "Why is it necessary for us to buy things and pay in dollars?" He goes, "There's no reason." He said, "We want to trade more freely," quote. He said, quote, "We are struggling to make payments for goods and services from one country to another because of differences in countries. And in the middle of all this, we're subject to a dollar environment." So think about this. You've got one country, one currency. Instead of just going to another country and swapping to that currency, you've got to go through the dollar, and then you got to go to the next currency. And he said, we want to get rid of the dollar middleman. And man, I actually can't blame him. They've created what's called a Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. It was launched in January 2022. You guys can look it up. Peter Schiff is even talking about this. And even former Goldman Sachs chief economist has come out and said, this is a big problem for the U.S. dollar. And that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with the BRICS. We're dealing with Asian nations. They're fed up with the dollar. And that's kind of where we stand right now. And everybody says, oh, the dollar will never go away. It may never go away, but will it be the world reserve currency? Will it hold its value? I don't know. Even Yellen came out and said the other day. She stated, quote, and you guys can see all my papers that I have all this notes that I take all the time. She even came out and said, the dollar's going down. And she said, also based on because we did the sanctions on Russia.
Yeah. Now they're telling us. Guys, if you want to invest in precious metals, I would advise you to go 3 places, as I do in every video. Stacey is a broker for Miles Franklin. They do have extremely good prices, but the point is to get into precious metals. So find the best deal. We have good prices, but I encourage you to go 2 other places first. Make Stacey your 3rd bid. So
we got one more story.
Okay. Good.
Oh yeah, not quite over yet. Sorry, the doom and gloom is not quite over yet. The U.S. national debt has hit an all-time high of $32 trillion. You guys, this breaks my heart. And this is quote: the $32 trillion mark was reached 9 years sooner than what was projected, and that's because of the COVID-19 and because of all the stimulus that we have done. I don't know, you guys. When I look at this and I read article after article, and Chris and I, we do so much research on some of this stuff sometimes. $25 trillion is just held by the public. That means we pay for it. And I think of it as like, all right, Chris and I are in our mid whatever we are. I'm not going to say our age, but middle-aged. But so we may be able to be fortunate. But our nieces and our nephews that we watch growing up, they are going to pay the burden. And it clearly states on here. It said we cannot even get through a single physical year without adding $1 trillion. And it said our debt addiction saddles the next generation with a debt burden that only grows so larger because they insist on ducking the hard choices of government. And if you guys know President Joe Biden, he just signed into law this whole, because we had to raise the debt ceiling. Remember, we were going to,
this is rich. This is good.
Well, you guys also, the government was going to shut down and all this kind of stuff. And of course, the name of it, ironically, is, quote, Fiscal Responsibility Act.
That's really good. It's always the opposite of what they say it is, every time.
And it suspends the debt ceiling for 19 months. They wanted to suspend the debt ceiling until after the election. So that means they can continue to borrow money, print money, do whatever they want. You guys, what this means, I don't know. I'm watching every day.
I know what it means. They're going to print more money. Nobody's held accountable for anything because we can come out with a Fiscal Responsibility Act. That's really funny. That means, oh, it's okay. They're being responsible, It's all the things you would happen to see when you're involved in a currency that's dying. It's the same as all the other ones. If you read the book When Money Dies, it's the same. The verbiage is the same. The politicians are saying about the same thing. And here we are. We're at the exponential, and other countries are encouraging their people to get into precious metals.
They are.
And the U.S., having the reserve currency, doesn't want any part of that. But when people start waking up and figuring it out, and it's on the news, the mainstream media, and it's going nuts, then what then? Where are those dollars from overseas going to go? They're going to have to come back here.
Yep.
That's the way I see it. Let me know what you think in the comments. And let me know if you like the floating down the creek bumping into things video.
We're sweating our butts off.
It is hot. Guys, have an awesome, awesome day. We'll see you in the next one. Later.